this is what the phoreser pads or the trans-Q pads look like. You have, this is the dispersive pad that completes the circuit, and this is the medication pad. The medication pad has a felt surface to it that we basically soak in the ionic solution. On the outside of the package, it tells you the size. So this is a 1.5 to 2 cc film. So 1.5 to 2 cc's of liquid ionic solution need to go on that pad. That pad then goes over your treatment area, and the dispersive pad has to go at least 2 inches away. Question?
Do they leave it on after the treatment?
No, I don't. They used to leave it on and just tell them leave it on until it falls off. But the problem is you can't evaluate the skin underneath if you leave it on. So if you created a burn and now you're leaving that ionic solution soaking in that blister, not a good idea. So you want to take it off and evaluate the skin. Okay. There is some notion that it changes the permeability and that there's continued absorption. If you want that kind of a treatment, you should go with the low amplitude over an extended period of time. They're ones that sit on for 24 hours that you can get. The patient just puts it on, pulls something, it goes on very low, they can barely feel it, and they wear it for 24 hours. And you always need to look at the skin underneath. Unless your CI tells you not to. CI tells you not to, you do what your CI says. Document that.
Dr. Lawson, can you close that cabinet before you
Why?
bang your head? Because we can't
I want to
see
leave
you.
early today. Okay, so this generally we use this for dexamethasone. 95% of the time we're treating inflammation. So we need to use the negative electrode. Anybody know what color negative generally is? Red is dead. I don't know why. Who's an electrical person is there? I don't know. They always red is dead. I don't know. Anyway, not here, not this. So black. So black goes over the treatment electrode, and if you look at the treatment electrode, there's a little button, okay? And again, I have to put my glasses on. You have to make sure that you connect it correctly. So there's a little metal piece in here. Little metal piece in there. That little metal piece has to be in contact with this metal piece. So there's only one correct way that it goes on. If you don't put it on correctly, you're going to get an error message on here. It'll beep and make all kinds of horrible sounds and tell you that it's not on correctly. Okay. So in general, there's a flat piece and then there's an open area. The flat goes up. So that makes sure that the metal is touching. Like that. And there's a flatter piece on top. Okay. So this, if you're putting it on and it keeps popping off, more than likely you're putting it on upside down. Okay? Nothing will happen. It will just make some noises and sounds. It just makes you look kind of silly in front of your patient. So you try not to do that. And then this pad goes at least 2 inches away, same kind of philosophy. The tighter part or the flatter part goes on top, and then this can go someplace else. So if I'm doing lateral epicondylitis, I can put it up here, I can put it down here, because it's flowing through both pads. So ultimately, it doesn't matter. I know that Dr. Z, when he does lateral epicondylitis, likes to put it here, under the notion of that it's driving between the two electrodes. It only goes in so deep. So if that's comfortable, it's a little close for my purposes. But if the patient is all right with it or your CI does it that way, that's fine. But just know that the closer the pads are, it's not as deep. Okay? Because the size, the distance will make it drive deeper the further apart it is. So it has to be at least 2 inches. Okay? The way that we prepare the pad is usually you have a small medication vial. Let me actually show you a real vial. I have locked up. The patient has to get a prescription. They have to go to a pharmacy that creates the solution, and it comes in usually a bigger vial than this with that person's name on it. It's their prescription. Either they have to bring it each time, or you're going to have to store it somewhere where no one else can use it. It used to be that we used to just get a vial and it would hang around the department. We'd all be drawing out of it and using it on different people. Can't do that anymore. It has to be a specific prescription for the patient. Okay, so I would draw out cc's. There are certain ways, no, not nurses, but there are certain ways to put this back in place. What I just did is not right. It has a needle on it, so if your patient sees it, please tell them you're not going to poke them with it, but that you're using it to wet the pad. But when you're done with it and you're going to recap it, you need to use a one-handed technique. Okay? Don't hold it and be like, that's how people stick themselves. Okay? So put it down and use a one-handed technique for it. I had a lot of coffee today, so I'm like, I'm very likely to stick myself. Now we don't have enough medication because we can no longer get the medication. So we have to use saline solution, which basically has no effect. If there's a couple of people in here that have a real problem, there are still 3 vials of medication, no, maybe 2, maybe 1.5 that you can try, but there's not enough for everybody. So for those who don't have a problem, you use the saline, okay? And basically you draw out the 1.5 cc's. If I can open it. Or maybe not. They don't come off ever. They don't want you refilling it? No. No, it doesn't either. All right. Well, this has a little opening in it. Step away. I guess you have to cut the top. I don't know. I don't wear contacts. Can you tell?
Careful with those scissors, Dr. Wall. That happened last time I had scissors on it.
All right, so let me just. So basically, you want to draw
You're
out.
just determined to hit your head on that cabinet, aren't you?
I am.
I would walk right into it. Saline.
So you draw 1.5 cc's, and the nice thing about the bottles is that you can turn them upside down. You can't turn this upside down. So you may have some air bubbles in there. If you do, just get a little bit more than 1.5 cc's. Okay, once you have the medication, it's really important to be evenly soaking this pad. So you want to watch what you're doing.
You want to stay on the gauze part of it too, because if you get off, then your electrode's not going to stick real well. You're basically putting liquid on the adhesive part.
That still has some liquid in it. So it soaks into the pad. It actually will change the color of it. And what it does is there's a buffering in the pad. It creates like a gelatinous kind of material. Okay? So then you would clean the skin where you were going to be putting it.
Just reminders for myself. That's the best way for me.
Yeah.
But she does on her arm, you know, like her hand.
So for the dispersive, again, try to keep your fingers off of the tacky stuff. Ooh, this is very tacky. Wait till it dries. Dispersive there. Try not to push on the middle where the pad is, because then you'll squeeze the fluid out and it will pull from sticking. Make sure it's sticking down everywhere on the outside. Good contact, and then you hit on. This is actually a home unit, and it automatically starts at 2 milliamps. If I'm at 2 milliamps and I want a 40 milliamp minute treatment, how long is my treatment? 20 minutes. So it's going to blink because it's slowly building up to the 2 milliamps, and then when it goes solid, it's at that level. Now this is a nice unit. This is actually a home unit, so that the patient can do this to themselves. So it automatically calculates the time. The units that we used to use, we have to calculate it out and figure out how long we have to go. But this actually tells you 2 milliamps, 20-minute treatment, 3 milliamps, 14-minute treatment, 4 milliamps, a 10-minute treatment. It's like Iontophoresis for dummies. I'm a dummy, so I like that. So now it's a solid green light, so it's delivering. And it just feels like a little biting. It's like a little bit of a biting, prickly sensation underneath the pad. And I mostly feel it here. If I want to increase it, you hit the on again, and it goes up. And it should start blinking again. As it builds up, goes through the resistance of my skin and begins to build up to 3 milliamps. So now it will be a 14-minute treatment. And the machine automatically calculates that. And then if I hit it again, once it's solid, I'm now getting a 4 milliamp treatment. And it's not bad. I barely feel it, actually. And it will blink until it gets to the 4 milliamps. Just be cautious. If you're putting this on somebody and they're telling you it's biting, don't turn it up. There's no reason to. Okay? You're just supposed to learn the setup and then how to look at the skin afterwards. You should probably try and feel the stim for a period of time before you turn it off, because if you're going to put something on someone, you better know what it feels like. Okay? So that when they say to you that I'm getting a really sharp prickly sensation right there, you can stop the treatment. That doesn't seem right, right? And usually it's underneath the pin part, the connector part of the pads. That's probably where the electrical stim is densest. It has the highest current density. Okay? At the end of the treatment, you remove the electrodes and you look at the skin. Sometimes you'll see little bumps on the skin, little tiny bumps, almost like a raised rash. And usually that disappears. That's part of that pH change. But if you see actual little blister, document that, because that probably is a little burn. It happens. Don't panic. You could put some cold on it to try and reduce the inflammatory process a little bit. Tell the patient, oh, that may be a little bit of a burn. Did you feel anything there? And they may say, oh yeah, well, it's funny you should say that. I felt like a bee was stinging me right there. Now you know for next time. Don't put it on there while it's healing. Okay? That tissue is more delicate now, so you don't want to be putting iontophoresis over that. Okay? And then tell the therapist about it. Okay? So that's it. And evidently I can't turn it off. Ever.
Like always, turn it off before you disconnect the things.
Yeah, because you will, if you touch the pad, you will feel it.
You can't hook these electrodes up to any of the other machines to get the DC.
Okay. That's what it sounds like when it's done.
You can't do
No, there are, we have a unit there that does DC. Whether I can use it for iontophoresis, I've never tried, because these pads, they're typically specifically made with these kind of hookups to it. So those are the ones that you stick in. So I would say no. Okay, I actually tried once, because we only have one phoresis unit, so I tried to see what we could do with that, but they have clips,
Right.
and I don't have electrodes with clips, so theoretically, if you had electrodes with clips, yes, you could do that with as long as it's continuous DC. And you don't go above, the 3 to 5 milliamps, right? Any questions on iontophoresis? What are we doing with iontophoresis? What are we using the DC stim for?
Medication.
We're trying to push medication.